Hey everybody, welcome back to the Men Need to Be Heard show. It is Dan, and today I'm switching things up a little bit. If you're a regular viewer, you know that normally I have a guest on with me to discuss various issues that men and boys face in today's modern society. But this week I'm changing it up and going solo because I want to cover a topic that I'm very passionate about and something that, while I won't be so bold as to claim to be an expert on it, I have done a tremendous amount of research and thus think I can speak with some authority on the topic. Now, if you followed me at all or watched the show before, you know that one of the biggest issues that I try to raise awareness on is how we as a society view young boys and men and how their issues and the uniqueness of those issues is rarely addressed. And today I want to talk about an issue that, if I'm being fair, is being talked about, but not quite in the way I think it needs to be. And that issue is bullying. Now, let's be clear right up front. Bullying of anyone is not acceptable. But when it comes to boys being bullied, we need to discuss the differences in how it affects them and why there needs to be a dedicated focus on addressing the issue from a boy's perspective. Something that is not being discussed. Bullying is a pervasive issue, one that affects millions of children worldwide. What many may not know is that numerous studies have shown that it's boys who are the primary victims of bullying, far more often than girls. In addition, while bullying can and does impact any child, boys face unique challenges and consequences, particularly regarding their mental health and well-being. And these unique challenges often aren't part of the discussion when it comes to addressing the issue. And they need to be. Understanding the impact of bullying on boys and exploring effective ways to combat it is crucial for parents, educators, and indeed society at large. Which is why I'm going to delve into the effects of bullying on boys, the long-term consequences of that bullying, and hopefully offer some possible strategies to address this critical issue. And of course, I have to say this because, as is so often the case when you try to address the unique issues that boys face, critics will immediately attack it as anti-girl. The goal of this video is not to dismiss the issue with regard to girls being bullied. They too need to have their challenges discussed and addressed, but instead to show how it affects boys differently and how solutions to address it that focus on girls' needs will often not work for boys. So let's start by asking the question, what exactly is bullying? Loosely, it's defined as repeated aggressive behavior intended to harm or intimidate another individual. While many attribute bullying as physical, the truth of the matter is it manifests in many other ways, such as verbal, social, and in an ever-increasing way via electronic means, also known as cyberbullying. However, all too often the focus is placed solely on the physical aspect, especially with regard to boys. And while it is true that boys are more likely to experience physical bullying than girls, and it is also true that often the physical bullying is at the hands of other boys, it doesn't tell the whole story. According to a study by the National Center for Educational Statistics, about 20% of students aged 12 to 18 reported being bullied in the United States in 2017, with boys more frequently involved in physical altercations. But the physical altercations are far less common than the other types. It might surprise you to learn that physical bullying accounts for less than a third of all bullying, with verbal and social harassment occurring in far greater percentages, 79 and 50% respectively. Thus, the focus on the physical aspect, especially with regard to boys, while needed, doesn't address the other forms anywhere near enough. This is concerning, especially when you consider the impact of bullying on boys, which can be severe and long-lasting. Research has shown that boys who are bullied are at a far higher risk of developing mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem, not just as boys, but long into adulthood. The stigma attached to being bullied can and often does lead to feelings of shame and isolation, causing boys to withdraw from social interactions and extracurricular activities. This isolation can further exacerbate the psychological impact of bullying, making it difficult for boys to form healthy relationships, and thus it limits their ability to succeed academically or in the workforce. And often, these effects last a lifetime and go unrecognized. Often when we're discussing the bullying of boys, the focus is entirely on bullying of boys by other boys. But it's important that we recognize and acknowledge the fact that it is girls who also bully boys, and that the rates at which they are doing so are increasing. Now, to be clear, this form of bullying isn't usually physical, but verbal, emotional, or social. And in many cases, those can be more devastating. I like to say that physical bruises will usually heal in time, but emotional or mental ones often don't ever heal unless they have intervention and therapy to address them. A common tactic that girls will use to bully boys, and other girls we should add, is to spread rumors about them, with the goal of isolating and excluding the boys from social groups. Girls are also much more likely to use online platforms to engage in cyberbullying, a type of bullying that can be particularly damaging because it often targets the boy's sense of identity and self-worth. And it involves significantly higher numbers of people who will join in on the bullying than might happen with a personal interaction. Getting a large number of people to dogpile, as it is known, on a boy and thus isolate him from getting help is thought to be one of the biggest contributors to boys' mental health issues and even suicide. Add to it that girls bullying boys is often overlooked or dismissed, minimized due to societal stereotypes that view girls as less aggressive than boys. However, research has shown that relational aggression, which often includes behaviors such as social exclusion and rumor spreading, is a far more common tactic, and the one that is primarily used by girls rather than physical bullying. It should also be noted that this is seen in interpersonal violence situations, also known as IPV, where women will abuse their spouse or significant other, not physically, but through other non-physical means, something that law enforcement and the courts often don't recognize as abuse being directed towards men. And when you factor in the stigma that is attached to boys who are bullied because they can't take it like a man, is it any wonder why boys who are bullied by girls may struggle to report these incidents, especially due to the fear of being ridiculed or not taken seriously? The effects of bullying can extend far beyond childhood and adolescence, well into adulthood, something I've personally witnessed with someone I went to grade school with, who was bullied unmercifully for years. He suffered severe trauma and ultimately ended up taking his life in his 30s directly due to the bullying he went through in middle and high school. And this isn't an isolated case. Studies have consistently shown that individuals who experience bullying as children are more likely to suffer from mental health problems in adulthood and more likely to unalive themselves. For instance, a study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that both victims and perpetrators of bullying were at an increased risk of psychiatric disorders in adulthood, including anxiety, depression, and antisocial personality disorder. It can further manifest itself in bouts of rage and anger, and sadly is often found to be the root cause in those who commit acts of violence or engage in criminal behavior. Studies have indicated that unresolved trauma from bullying can contribute to the development of aggressive tendencies, leading some individuals to lash out as the means of coping with their pain. A pattern we've seen time and again with those who commit school shootings. This cycle of violence can perpetuate further harm, affecting both the individual and society at large. Moreover, the impact of bullying on boys can manifest itself in physical health issues. Chronic stress from being bullied can lead to various health problems, such as cardiovascular issues and a weakened immune system. Add to it, those who are or have suffered the effects of being bullied will often try to self-medicate through the use of drugs or alcohol, or participate in risky behaviors. and it can affect their professional lives as well, as they may struggle with confidence and assertiveness in the workplace. Simply put, the long-term effects of bullying cannot be understated, and consideration needs to be given to them and the effects it has on boys and ultimately men. As mentioned earlier, one of the most alarming consequences of bullying is its impact on the teen male suicide rate. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among adolescents, and boys in particular are most vulnerable. Research indicates that boys are more likely to die by suicide than girls, even though girls may attempt suicide more often. For girls, it is postulated that they make the choice in order to get attention and ultimately assistance with their issues. Thus, while they may make more attempts, the result is often they choose methods, such as the use of pharmacological drugs, that are less likely to result in success. For boys, it may be that they see no other way to get assistance. So it's not a call for attention, but in their minds, the only way to escape the trauma they are dealing with. Thus, they opt for methods such as the use of firearms, hanging, and asphyxia. It should be noted that those facts are not meant to dismiss in any way the attempts made by females, but to show that unfortunately boys tend to be much more successful than girls in their attempts. Add to it the unrelenting pressure to conform to traditional masculine norms, combined with the stigma surrounding mental health. It should not surprise us in any way that boys feel prevented from seeking help when they are struggling. Bullying can significantly contribute to suicidal ideation among boys. A study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health found that boys who experienced bullying were more likely to report suicidal thoughts and behaviors than those who were not bullied. The relentless nature of bullying, particularly cyberbullying, can exacerbate feelings of hopelessness and despair, leading some boys to view suicide as the only escape. So why is bullying among boys often ignored? Well, it's overlooked for several reasons. Societal norms and stereotypes about masculinity can lead to the misconception that boys should be able to tough it out or fight back, minimizing the seriousness of bullying, especially when the bullying is coming from girls. Boys also may be reluctant to fight back for fear they will be viewed as being the bully, or choose to not report their being bullied due to fear of being perceived as weak or out of fear of retaliation. Additionally, schools and communities often disregard the data and studies with regard to boys, and thus may lack the resources or awareness to effectively address bullying among boys. In many cases, they focus on addressing the bullying of girls, which rightfully needs attention, but do so at the expense of the boys. Without proper intervention and support, bullying can persist and escalate, leaving lasting scars on its victims. So how do we combat bullying, especially with regard to boys? Addressing bullying among boys requires a multifaceted approach, one that involves parents, educators, and policymakers. Here are some effective strategies to combat bullying. First, we need to promote open communication. We need to encourage boys to talk about their experiences and feelings and to be able to do so without fear of judgment. We need to create a safe and supportive environment, both at home and in school, one that can help boys feel comfortable seeking help. We also need to challenge gender stereotypes. We need to teach boys about healthy masculinity and challenge traditional gender norms that may discourage them from expressing their vulnerability or seeking help. We need to stop telling them to toughen up or that it's not manly to even have feelings or emotions. Instead, we should be encouraging them to share those feelings and emotions and that it doesn't make them any less of a man to do so. We need to show them that it makes them strong by having the courage to speak up. We also need to implement anti-bullying programs specific to boys. Schools need to adopt evidence-based anti-bullying programs that address the unique needs of boys. The one-size-fits-all approach, which is often tailored to female victims, has been proven not to work and needs to be abandoned in favor of specific programs that focus on empathy, conflict resolution, and peer support in a way that speaks to and thus can be effective in helping boys who are being bullied. Further, those same programs need to address those that are exhibiting bullying behaviors, including and especially girls. We also need to provide mental health support. We need to provide access to mental health resources specifically tailored to boys that have experienced bullying. These counseling and therapy programs have to disregard the current norms for treatment, which aren't working, and instead be changed to reflect the specific needs of boys. We need to address those needs and communicate the solutions to them in a way that works for the boys, not for the therapist or society. This alone could have a significant impact on helping boys to process their experiences and develop acceptable coping strategies. Other areas that we need to focus on include partnering and involving parents and guardians of school-age boys. We need to acknowledge that parents, and in particular fathers, play a vital role in combating bullying. They should be informed that their child may be suffering from bullying and educated about the signs of bullying so that they can recognize it themselves. Additionally, we need to educate and equip them with strategies to support their children, especially with strategies that will support boys. We also need to leverage technology by having a specific focus on how to use technology to monitor and prevent cyberbullying, especially with regard to social media. An extensive campaign needs to be done, which encourages boys to report online bullying and teaches them about safe online behaviors, something that is frequently done for girls, but often neglects boys or portrays them as the bullies, not the victims. We also need to look at changing policy and legislation. Advocacy for stronger anti-bullying policies and legislation specifically with regard to the needs of boys needs to be increased at both the local and national level. School boards and administrators need to be held accountable for creating a safe and inclusive environment for all students, regardless of gender. Programs specific to addressing the bullying of boys need to be developed, funded, and supported, and done so in a supportive manner. Bullying is a serious issue that affects both boys and girls. That is a fact. However, we also need to recognize that it can have profound and lasting effects on boys, ones that often differ from those of girls. Again, we're not trying to minimize the trauma of girls. We're simply asking that we recognize the differences between how it affects boys and girls, and ultimately men and women. We need to recognize this fact and come to an understanding of the unique challenges boys and later men face, and then implement effective strategies to combat those challenges. We need to recognize that boys can indeed be victims of bullying, something that many deny, and that addressing that bullying is essential for promoting their mental health and well-being. Only by fostering open communication, challenging gender stereotypes, and providing adequate support can we create a safer and more supportive environment for boys, one in which they can thrive. In the end, addressing bullying requires a collective effort from parents, educators, and society as a whole. By prioritizing the mental health and well-being of boys, we can reduce the impact of bullying and help them develop into confident and resilient adults. I want to conclude by saying thank you for watching, and I hope that you found this educational. And I would really appreciate it if you would be so kind as to like the video and share it with others to help spread the word and raise awareness on the issue. And please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be aware when I release new videos on the issues men and boys face in today's modern society.